Hello everybody, welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I will talk about stories of my life, my work both as a comic book author and a translator, my cats Hey Hey and Serengeti, and the occasional movie, book or TV series review and recommendation, as well as some rants if the feeling hits. Now, I'm going to hit the big elephant in my room about my latest hyperfixation. Last time I mentioned how RRR took the Oscars by surprise with the best song Natu Natu. Now, Natu Natu itself is a thing of wonder that you should have seen by now because it's one of the most joyous musical numbers in a movie ever, but it's also just the little tip of the huge iceberg that is RRR, and RRR itself is just the tip of the iceberg of Telugu cinema, which is the rabbit hole that I am exploring right now, and I am going to drag you with me because I can. Because how amazing RRR was, and how it took every one of us by absolute surprise, there have been a ton, and I mean a ton of videos made about the movie by a lot of channels that are a lot bigger than my own. And one would think that due to that, every single millimeter of the film has been analyzed to hell and back. That is the one thing that I thought, and I was not sure about when I started planning this video because, yeah, everybody has said everything. Except I realized that there was one very important element of the RRR narrative that has not been talked about enough, if at all. And that is the amazing use of multiple languages during the film in order to create a narrative. And so happens that I love languages, so yeah, right up my alley. For this, I am going to be using mostly the Hindi version of the film. I'd rather use the Telugu version, as Telugu is the native language of Ramajoli, Charan and JR, and thus the original language of the film, although Tarak and Charan dubbed their lines in Hindi for RRR. But the Telugu version has this little thing that I really dislike, and it's that the English lines are overdubbed in Telugu. That is, you can hear the English under the Telugu reading. And that unfortunately makes a very different viewing experience, so I cannot recommend it as the first time you see it. But if you can, please watch RRR in Telugu too. Watch it in Hindi to understand what I'm talking about. Then watch it in Telugu because it's the original language of the film. And if you do not speak Hindi or Telugu, like I don't, learn to love subtitles because you are missing a lot of great movies by not reading subtitles. Anyway, with that said, let's talk about language barriers and RRR. If you haven't watched RRR yet, I really recommend you do so. To quote a cliche, please pause this video, go watch it, and then come back in about 3 hours and a half. Yeah, it sounds long, but trust me, those are going to be amazingly exciting 3 hours, and then you're going to need the last half an hour to decompress, and then come back here. RRR is basically a masala film, which, as I said in my last video, means it encompasses many genres into itself, but deep down, the root, the skeleton of RRR is an epic historical fiction movie. The director and co-writer, S.S. Ramajoli, took two very real historical figures of the Indian Revolution against the British, Alluri Sitarama Raju and Komuram Bhim, and noticing they had a lot in common, decided to write a whole what if they had met and become friends. However, if you do happen to know a little bit about the two men's history, or, read the Wikipedia page as I did, you will realize that mostly he took the names, or half the names in the case of Sitarama Raju, as for a reason that makes sense when you watch the movie. In there, he's just called Alluri Ramaraju and not Alluri Sitarama Raju, and went wild with his story. Does that make RRR historical fan fiction? Yes, it does. And it's amazing. I think more countries should do that with their heroic figures. We had Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. We have now Komuram Bhim and Ramaraju, the best friends forever of India. And I really need one movie with Emiliano Zapata and Pancho Villa having homoerotic tension between the two of them during the Mexican Revolution. Just saying. Anyway, I digress. I hope that you have already watched RRR if we're going to continue together. Because as much as I hate giving spoilers, to discuss the theme of today, I will need to give a lot of spoilers. that are somewhat big twists on the movie, so please, 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 please go and watch it if you haven't. I swear you won't be disappointed. That said, that was your last warning about spoilers. From here on, it's tigers and bears, oh my, literally, in a case. Anyway, the general plot of RRR, or at least of the first hour, goes like this. In 1929, the British governor to India, Scott Buxton, and his wife Catherine visited a Gwon village in the Adilabad forest and took a young girl named Mali from her mother, as the girl was very talented at singing and painting henna. Catherine wanted her as a trophy for her party, so they paid 2 coins for her and decided to leave. The mother was not very happy about that. 6 months later, the Nazim, a monarchy within India who was in favor of the British because they were enemies of the Gond, decided to warn the governor's butler, Edward, that the Gond's tribe protector was coming to get his child back. Well, the child back. And nothing would stop him from doing so. However, they can't tell the British anything more about the protector because they don't know a name or any description. They just know that he's coming and he's not going to stop at anything. Said Gond protector, Komran Bhim, is already in the city of Delhi by the time the Nazim decide to warn the British. He has been living undercover as a Muslim mechanic actor right in the shadow of the governor's bungalow and having been there for 6 months planning how to rescue Mali. With the impossible task of finding a man without a name, any description or identifying marks, no British cops wants to volunteer because they know it's a mission destined to fail. However, a native officer by the name of Alluri Ramaraju volunteers to find and arrest the gun protector with the promise by Catherine herself that if he does, he will be given the rank of special officer, a rank that was never given to those born in India, much less of those of brown skin. However, by a turn of fate that no one could have expected, except, anyone who read the summary, Ramaraju meets the gun protector while both of them are undercover and unaware of the other's identity. In an even more ironic twist of fate, they become fast friends, quickly spending their free time together, with Ram even trying to help Bhim to flirt with a British lady, Jenny Buxton, and in exchange Bhim introducing him to his fake family, the Parshas, and treating him like a long-lost brother. Of course, this can't go on for long, and on the day when Bhim is to carry his plan to free Mali, Ramaraju discovers the truth. And that's not even half of the movie. Trust me, it gets even more dramatic as we go on. As I said, there are a ton of things to talk about with analyzing RRR. S.S. Rajamouli is considered a genius director for a good reason, as the film has a lot of layers that include foreshadowing, symbolism, and things that you really don't notice until the second viewing, which makes it incredibly enjoyable. And there have been a lot of videos about that, both retelling the whole movie or just having an analysis of part of it, like the opening or the music. However, as I pointed out in the introduction, I have yet to see anyone talk about the fact that RRR is a bilingual, actually a trilingual movie, but we will get to that later. And that language, more specifically the language each character speaks, it's a very important part of the movie's narrative and how the plot twists are revealed. I need to make a parenthesis here to explain something. There is no single official Indian language. As far as the Indian Constitution is concerned, there are 22 official languages in the country. But according to a census that was made in 2001, there were listed about 122 major languages with 1,599 dialects. Of course, this number was very affected because some people did not differentiate between language and dialect, and that of course makes things very, very complicated. Just 22 languages is quite impressive, and it also gets even more impressive when we consider that every single region with their own language has their own movie industry, which makes movies exclusively in that language, so they have to be either dubbed or subtitled, or sometimes just remade wholesale with new actors to the other languages. Yes, this means that, for example, Tarak and Ram Charan are very big Tollywood stars, but they are not really impressive for Bollywood. RRR in specific was filmed in Telugu, the language spoken in the south of India, and then read off by the same cast in Hindi, which is the one that you can watch on Netflix, Tamil, and Kannada. I personally prefer to hear their movies in Telugu most of the time, as it's their voices and their language, even if I don't speak it and I have to rely on subtitles. But in the specific case of RRR, my preferred version for now is the Hindi one because of the tiny detail of the Telugu version having the English people being overdubbed by Telugu voices. Because that changes the subject that we're talking today. Language is a very, very important part of the narrative of RRR. To begin with, both Bhim and Ramaraju are from the south of India, what is now the Telangana and the Andhra Pradesh states. So they both speak Telugu as their native languages. And even in the dubbed versions, they use certain words that are Telugu rather than Hindi, so they speak Hindi with a southern accent, so to speak, because in Delhi, they speak Hindi, because Delhi is in the north of India, and that is where the action of the movie takes place. In particular, and this is something that you can hear perfectly well in the version, Bhim constantly calls Raju Bhaiya, which in Hindi means older brother. However, when he is with his tribe members, they call him Anna, which in Telugu means older brother. This comes ahead the day when Bhim reveals his identity to Raju as the Gun tribe protector, because he stops calling him Bhaiya and starts calling him Anna. In fact, that is the very first clue, so to speak, that Raju has that, yes, actor is in reality Bhim. He had some other clues at the time, but that is what hammers down the moment in which Bhim calls him Anna. This is lost for many Western audiences, but for Indian audiences it's a very good tell, which is why it's kept, I think, in all the Indian language stuffs. But that is not the only place where language is important in the narrative of RRR. It's not just that for someone who knows more about culture and dialects in India, you can tell the difference between how Bhim speaks with his brothers from the Gun tribe and how Bhim speaks when pretending to be actor, because Telugu and Hindi are not the only languages that play a part in the plot of RRR. There is also English. Let's remember that India was one of the many, many British colonies for about 100 years or so. Even before that, they had to deal with colonizers from 1757 onwards because there was the East India Company. All that caused that there were thousands of British citizens in India who thought themselves superior to the natives and who, of course, had no interest in learning any of the multiple languages that existed in the country. This is very realistically portrayed in RRR, since none of the British characters speak any Telugu or Hindi at all. Almost every single one of their dialogues is in English, which in the Hindi version gets subtitled to Telugu, and in the Telugu version is overdubbed in a way that you still hear the English audio under the Telugu one, which is recited without the same emotion as the English, and that really loses a lot. Oh, there is one exception to this. There is one British person who speaks Telugu or Hindi, depending on the version that you are watching, and that is the guard at the Buxton houses who gives instructions to the servants. That's it. Everybody else speak English. At the same time, there are a few Indian characters who speak English. Besides Ramaraju, we can assume his uncle, Venkateswarulu, who is also working with him, and I am sure I butchered his name, speaks it because he is also a cop, even if he's a lower ranker than his nephew. And there is a translator who follows the governor's butler very diligently and loyally. Most of the Indians speak in Hindi or Telugu and only speak English when talking to a white person, which makes everyone's relationship to language quite interesting. For example, the very first time we hear Ramaraju speak is in English. And his first line is chilling. Do you want him dead or alive? Referring to Bhim as he volunteers to capture the gun protector. With this, Ram is shown to us as completely assimilated into the British Raj, He's dressed like them in the beige uniform post-war, wearing his hair and mustache like them, without a beard, and speaking their language. He still speaks English for most of the first half when talking to the British, but also to other Indian officers. It is a way to show that Rama Raju is on the British side. Of course, when he's undercover, so to speak, he doesn't change his name and he still dresses Western style, but he lets his beard grow and doesn't mention he's a cop. So let's be honest, Rama Raju is not very good at undercover. He starts speaking in Telugu or Hindi, but the first impression that we get of him is what counts. Not only that, when we have a very little glimpse of his diary, he writes in English. So yes, Rama Raju is completely absorbed by this alien culture. In contrast, Bhim doesn't speak a single word of English. And this makes it quite difficult for him to do anything around Delhi and his missions. He gets beaten by a man who is accusing him of cheating, not even knowing what he's being beaten for, only knowing that he has to apologize because you apologize to white people. When he realizes that Jenny can be the key to enter the Buxton's mansion, he tries to get to know her, but practically every single line that he says to her is either a variation of, "Can I go to your house?" or "I don't know what you are saying," which at the same time, he does answer when she asks if he's okay, which lets us know that Bhim may not speak English, nor understands it, but he can tell certain things by tone and attitude, and how the British expect him to answer to those tones. Bhim is incredibly smart, and part of it is shown by the fact that, not knowing the language, he can communicate. Now, how do the British communicate them with the natives? Mostly with translators. We only see one, and he doesn't always do his job, as it would make the movie even longer if he had to repeat every line in English back in Telugu. He is there for the most important things. And respecting the fact that not every citizen in India speaks the same language, we even see in the rebel meeting that Ram infiltrates before meeting Bhim, a translator who repeats what is being said in Telugu in a different Indian language, which unfortunately I can't recognize just yet to tell you which it was. But it is a show of how language was a very important part of why there was such a division in the country. So it is even more significant then that there is a big emphasis on how Bhim and Ram managed to communicate without words. In the very first meeting, they don't talk. They communicate with signs, as there's too big of a distance between them to actually hear each other. And that gives a second, much more important subtext. They are both Indian. No matter what language they speak, they should understand each other in order to work together to save a child. Or, in truth, to save India. If you haven't seen RRR, I have to repeat it. Do yourself a favor and watch it. It will probably be the cure to your action movie craving, especially if you're a bit burned out from Hollywood-style action movies, but are still not 100% yet that you want to commit to a Tollywood movie with a ton of songs. And if you have already seen it, watch it again, but this time pay attention not so much to the subtitles, but the words being said, to how each character reacts to each another, given how they are spoken to and what they actually understand as they talk. I bet it will let you see a lot of new things in the movie and you will enjoy it more. I want to thank my dear patrons Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, Jessic, Ellie Riley, and Greater Philip Leto, as well as my first supporter Tania Pineda and the most amazing Amy Song, without whom none of my videos would be possible. I also want to remind you that if you want to support these and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/Adalisa, written link in the description, as I know my name can be hard to spell, and with just $1 a month, you will always be thanked in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else, and get the chance to suggest future subjects for videos. You can also support me through Ko-fi, and for each coffee you will mention in 3 future videos. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, and of course you sharing the links. I also welcome all your questions, feedbacks and suggestions in the comments below. This was Adalisa Zarate, and I will see you soon so we can grab another cup of coffee and talk about another Tollywood movie. This time starred by Tarak, GR and TR. The movie, Temper. And our subject? The importance of redemption arcs done right.